Welcome back. In this video, you'll be learning about Spanish and French colonization in North America from roughly 1492 to 1600. In this video, we are answering two big questions. First, what motivated Spain and France to establish colonies in North America? And second, how are these colonies different as a result of the different motives of France and Spain? Let's go back to the time following Columbus's return from the New World. You may recall from an earlier video that there were two major naval powers in Europe at the time, Portugal and Spain, and both staked a claim to this newly discovered land to the west. And both were also Catholic. Consequently, they were controlled not only by their own crowns, but also by the Pope. And the Pope at the time was a man named Pope Alexander VI. And with the stroke of the pen, Pope Alexander helped settle the dispute between Spain and Portugal by drawing an imaginary line from the North Pole to the South Pole, 100 leagues west of the Cape Verde Islands off the coast of Africa. And Spain could settle and control anything west of this line, and Portugal got anything east of it. And this divided the New World between Spain and Portugal. The Spanish and the Portuguese kings eventually worked out a deal based upon the Pope's decree, and it's known as the Treaty of Tordesillas. As a result of this treaty, the division line was relocated slightly more west. However, one quick look at the map and the line as it's drawn, one can easily see that Spain got the much better end of the deal. Now, it's important to remember that nobody at the time, including Pope Alexander, really understood the extent of land in the New World, and so this line was simply drawn arbitrarily. But the Treaty of Tordesillas is important for its impact on the colonization of South and North America. Its effects are still felt to this day. Brazil, which was east of the line, would be colonized by Portugal. This is why Brazilians today speak Portuguese. However, the rest of South and Central America was colonized by the Spanish, and that is why these areas primarily today speak Spanish. Upon Columbus's return, Spanish society was transfixed with tales of his voyages. More importantly, Spaniards were fascinated by the gold and native slaves that Columbus had brought back with him to Europe. More gold meant more glory, wealth, and power for Spain. Men known as conquistadors assembled expeditionary forces and headed to Central and South America after learning of Columbus's tales. Conquistadors were part Spanish soldier and part explorer. The conquistadors quickly captured and subdued vast Native American populations, and they were able to do this so easily due to the spread of deadly diseases among the natives and the conquistadors' superior weaponry and things like, or other reasons, for such reasons like they had horses and the natives didn't. They had to rely, as you may remember, just on their llamas. Woohoo! The conquistadors were motivated by 3 G's: gold, glory, and God. The gold is pretty self-evident. The God that they were motivated by was that they wanted to convert what they thought were godless Indians to Christianity. And they were also motivated by glory for themselves, for Spain, and for the king. Now, the most successful conquistadors were Francisco Pizarro, who conquered the Incan Empire, and Hernan Cortez, whose expedition led to the fall of the Aztec civilization. Eventually, Spanish conquistadors ventured north and more inland into the land we know today as the United States. The first of these conquistadors was Ponce de Leon. According to a popular legend, de Leon was searching for the fountain of youth, and of all places, Florida. Maybe that is why so many old people move to Florida, because somehow they think that there's a fountain of youth there. Most historians believe that De Leon may have been looking for the fountain of youth, but he was probably more interested in finding gold and new land for Spain to colonize. And it turns out that the only thing De Leon found in Florida was hostile Indians. De Leon was wounded by a poisonous arrow and he eventually died. The second Spanish expedition into land that is today part of the United States was conducted by Hernando de Soto. De Soto had become a rich man participating in the Spanish conquest of the Incan Empire. However, he was overshadowed by more famous conquistadors like Pizarro and Cortez. De Soto sought greater glory for himself in Spain. With the help of the Spanish king, De Soto amassed a force of 600 men and 200 horses. He set sail for Florida and set out in search of gold and silver. For nearly 4 years, he and his men wandered across 4,000 miles of the southeastern United States, eventually reaching the Mississippi River. This painting, which hangs in the Capitol of the United States Rotunda today, shows De Soto 3 years into his journey at the time when he was discovering the Mississippi River. Well, how historically accurate is this painting? Oh, man, it's not good. De Soto is depicted as a godlike figure on a white horse with shiny armor. He and his men are being welcomed by Native Americans, and you can see one of them handing De Soto a peace pipe. In reality, things couldn't be further from the truth of this painting. De Soto crossed the Mississippi River 3 years into his voyage. At that point, his voyage was a complete and total bust. He had not found any gold or any silver, and many of his men had died from disease, starvation, or from wars with hostile Indians. With no access to supplies, he and his men had undoubtedly resorted to living more like Indians than like the Europeans that is depicted in this painting. De Soto himself died of fever a year later and was buried in the Mississippi River. He was buried in the river so that the Native Americans wouldn't be fooled because he had told them that he was in fact an immortal god. While De Soto was exploring the southeastern United States, another conquistador named Francisco de Coronado was exploring parts of the southwestern United States. Coronado was searching for the mythical Cibola, the 7 cities of gold. Coronado set out from Mexico with 1,000 men. For 3 years he walked along the Native American trails, unsuccessfully searching for the legendary cities of gold. Coronado did visit the Grand Canyon and some Zuni pueblos, which were likely the original source for the legend of Cibola. However, after venturing as far as Kansas, Coronado returned to Mexico, a total failure. Although his attempt to find gold was a fail, Coronado established Spain's claim to the land that would eventually become the southwestern United States. Because Spanish conquistadors failed to find gold or glory in the interior of North America, this region was largely ignored by the Spanish. Most of the Spanish settlement in the region came about as a result of the Catholic missionary system. Missions were established throughout the region for the purpose of converting the native peoples to Christianity. The Spanish would eventually set up Christian missions, first in St. Augustine, Florida, which became the first permanent European settlement in the United States, and then later in places like San Antonio, San Diego, Los Angeles, and San Francisco. These places bear Spanish names today because they were first settled by Spanish missionaries during the colonial period. Now, Spain's limitless lust for gold frequently drove Spanish conquistadors to commit horrific acts of cruelty and violence against Native Americans. These stories would eventually become to be known as the Black Legend. Stories of Spanish atrocities first appeared in a book written by a Spanish priest named Bartolomé de las Casas. The book is called A Brief Account of the Destruction of the Indies. In the book, de las Casas describes an incident where Spanish conquistadors snatched Indian children by the leg and threw them into a river. The whole time, the Spanish were laughing and screaming, "Boil there, you offspring of the devil!" De las Casas also claims that the soldiers made low, wide gallows on which they strung up 13 Indians. The soldiers set fire at the Indians' feet, burning them alive. Now, if you like horror stories, pause the video and read a little of the Black Legend as it was described in Bartolome de las Casas' book. The Black Legend was a very powerful force, and it was eventually the stories were eventually picked up and used by rival European powers such as England and France to damage Spain's reputation. France's colonization in North America moved at a much slower pace than Spain. The origins of the French colonialism in the New World can be traced back to the voyages of Jacques Cartier in 1535. Cartier traveled down the St. Lawrence River as far as Montreal, searching for a westward passage to China. However, early attempts to establish a lasting French colony failed, and the area was originally used simply as fishing grounds for French ships. In 1608, a guy named Samuel de la Champlain founded the city of Quebec along the St. Lawrence River. This was France's first permanent settlement. The region became known as New France. Champlain used the friendships he created with Indians to start a profitable fur trading business. And the French established a lucrative economic network with the Huron and Algonquin Indians, which soon developed into a military alliance against the English settlers to the south. And you can remember France's main motives for colonizing in the New World in an easy way. It's simply the two F's for France, and those were fish and furs. And that should be spelled F-U-R-S. According to the legend, a French fur trader named Robert de La Salle was told by the Indians about a great river to the south. La Salle became obsessed with finding this river, believing that it was the passage leading to the Pacific Ocean in China. On his first expedition, de La Salle located the Ohio River and took it as far south as the location of the city of Louisville today. On a later expedition, La Salle explored the Great Lakes, eventually finding his way to the Mississippi River. La Salle traversed the Mississippi all the way to the Gulf of Mexico. He claimed the land bordering the Mississippi River and named it Louisiana, after King Louis. The French would eventually establish trading outposts in the Great Lakes region and along the Ohio and Mississippi rivers. These outposts still bear French names to this day, names such as Detroit, Dubuque, Des Moines, St. Louis, Baton Rouge, and New Orleans. Now let's return to the big question and quickly summarize what were the major differences between Spanish and French colonies in North America. The first difference were their locations. The Spanish settled mainly in the South and Central America, and they eventually colonized parts of Florida and the land that would become the United States today, places like Texas, New Mexico, Arizona, and California. The French colonized the area around the St. Lawrence River, the Great Lakes region, and the Mississippi River. Now, as for motives for colonization, the Spanish conquistadors were seeking the three G's: gold, God, and glory, while the French were after the two F's: furs and fish. Their different treatment of Native Americans, these motives resulted in different treatment of the Native Americans. The Spanish viewed the natives at best as a labor source. Generally, they treated the Native Americans harshly, and they ended up killing and enslaving a vast number of Native Americans. And this led to stories such as the Black Legend. On the other hand, the French developed better relations, more relatively peaceful relations with the Native Americans, because they saw them as trading partners with whom they created trade alliances. Now, hopefully after watching this video, you understand the major differences between Spanish and French motives for colonizing in the New World, and you understand how the colonies evolved differently as a result of these different motives. And as always, thanks for watching.